This is the Dollemore Daily, and I'm Jesse Dollemore.
In my hand, I hold a lawsuit. This is surely one of many to come. This was filed 2 days ago in the United States District Court for the District of Columbia, filed by James Blassingame and Sidney Hemby, two United States Capitol Police officers who were injured at the behest of Donald Trump after he incited a riot on January 6th. Anyway, I'm going to read a little bit from a Washington Post article very briefly just to kind of give you some background. And then I'm going to read a few things from this lawsuit, from their lawsuit. Over 140 police officers were injured as a direct result of Donald Trump inciting an insurrection, an attempted overthrow of the government of the United States, the government that he would soon no longer be in charge of, no longer lead as president. We all witnessed this. The world witnessed the madness. And now there likely will be repercussions. I've said in previous videos that if criminal lawsuits, because the Justice Department or whatever local municipality doesn't follow through quick enough, if those don't find justice for America, it will be left to civil courts to deal with. And that is what we're seeing. Anyway, I'm going to read from this article. From the Washington Post, two Capitol Police officers sue Trump for physical and emotional injuries suffered in January 6th riot. Two Capitol Police officers who battled the mob of Donald Trump supporters that stormed the Capitol on January 6th are suing the former president for the physical and emotional injuries they say they suffered in the attacks. In a federal lawsuit filed Tuesday in D.C., officers James Blassingame and Sidney Hemby, I apologize if I am butchering their names, allege that for months, Trump rallied the insurrectionists with baseless election fraud claims that eventually culminated in the breach of the Capitol that left 5 dead, including a Capitol Police officer. About 140 D.C. and Capitol Police officers were injured, according to the police union, and 2 officers who had been on duty at the Capitol that day later died by suicide. Blassingame, a 39-year-old former United States Marine who lives in Maryland, serves as a training and recruitment programs manager for the Capitol Police, according to his Facebook page. Hemby, 36, is also a Maryland resident. Blassingame and Hemby aren't the only officers who responded to the scene at the Capitol that day who have reported suffering physical injuries. At least 81 Capitol Police officers were assaulted on January 6th, according to filings by federal prosecutors. About 65 D.C. police officers also suffered injuries during the Capitol siege, including several concussions from head blows from various objects, including metal poles ripped from inauguration scaffolding, police officials said. And then here is what substantiates what I just claimed about there being more cases to come. Patrick A. Malone, an attorney representing both officers, told the Post that he expects other officers who reported suffering injuries that day to move forward with litigation. That's from the Washington Post. This is from the actual filing in the United States District Court. I'll just put it on screen. This is a complaint for damages by U.S. Capitol Police officers for physical and emotional injuries caused by the defendant Donald Trump's wrongful conduct inciting a riot on January 6, 2021, by his followers trying to overturn the results of the 2020 presidential election. Then it goes on to talk about the parties. The plaintiffs, James Blassingame and Sidney Hemby, are United States Capitol Police officers. They are both residents of Maryland. The defendant, Donald J. Trump, was the 45th president of the United States from January to January 2021. He is a resident and citizen of Florida. Moving on to the factual background, and this is where it gets good. Listen, I'm not going to read, this is 40 pages long, and it is a moment-by-moment transcript of what went down, involving specifically these two individual Capitol Police officers. I'm not going to read the whole 40 pages. I will indeed link to it in the description down below. I would encourage you to spend some time, pour yourself a cup of coffee, and read through this. This chronicles the terror, the horrors that took place that day, the racist onslaught that was encouraged by Donald Trump. Section 3, factual background. PFC James Blassingame is a 17-year veteran of the United States Capitol Police. PFC Sidney Hemby is an 11-year veteran of the U.S. Capitol Police. Both United States Capitol Police officers reported for duty on January 6, 2021, without any suspicion that they would soon become the targets of Trump's followers. Those followers had assembled in Washington at Trump's calling for a rally at the White House ellipse that quickly evolved into a violent insurrection at the Capitol. The insurrectionists were spurred on by Trump's conduct over many months in getting his followers to believe his false allegation that he was about to be forced out of the White House because of massive election fraud by his presidential adversary, Joe Biden, and that the convening of Congress on January 6 to count the Electoral College results and declare the winner was their last chance to quote-unquote stop the steal. The insurrectionist mob, which Trump had inflamed, encouraged, incited, directed, and aided and abetted, forced its way over and past the plaintiffs and their fellow officers, pursuing and attacking them inside and outside the United States Capitol, and causing the injuries complained of herein. As a result of Trump's speech on January 6, 2021, his conduct and statements leading up to and on that date, and his failure on that date to take timely action to stop his followers from continued violence at the Capitol, Trump committed torts that resulted in injuries to the United States Capitol Police officers and Metropolitan Police Department officers, including the plaintiffs. These torts are directing assault and battery, aiding and abetting assault and battery, directing intentional infliction of emotional distress, liability per se, and they talk about a code, incitement to riot, and liability per se for another DC code, disorderly conduct. Trump's conduct leading up to the 2020 presidential election. During his 2016 campaign and throughout his presidency, Trump had threatened violence toward his opponents, encouraging his followers to commit acts of violence, and condoned acts of violence by his followers, including white supremacist and far-right hate groups. Trump's stoking of violence by his followers accelerated during the 2020 presidential campaign. During the first presidential debate, held on September 29, 2020, Trump repeatedly asserted without evidence that the election would be fraudulent and rigged. Quote, "There's fraud. They found them. Ballots in creeks. They found some. Just happened to have the name Trump just the other day in a waste paper basket. This is going to be a fraud like you've never seen." Another example, quote, unquote, "It's a rigged election." Another example, quote, unquote, "This is not going to end well." Asked during that first presidential debate by moderator Chris Wallace to condemn white supremacists and far-right hate groups, Trump responded, "Proud Boys, stand back and stand by." Minutes later, the chairman of the Proud Boys, Enrique Tarrio, posted a message on Parler, a social networking service popular among extremist groups, saying, "Standing by, sir." The Proud Boys would go on to become a core group of January 6 insurrectionists. And then I'm going to wrap this part of it. Wallace asked if Trump would urge his supporters to, quote unquote, "stay calm" following the election and, quote, "not to engage in any civil unrest." Trump responded, "If it's a fair election, I am 100% on board. But if I see tens of thousands of ballots being manipulated, I can't go along with that. This is a remarkable retelling because it doesn't just talk about what took place in the weeks leading up to. This goes into detail about even the prior campaign. There's only a couple of instances that I want to talk about. This is on page 21. There's one on 22 and one on page 23. Seriously, read it. It's 40 pages. It is riveting. Officer Hemby was attacked relentlessly. He was bleeding from a cut located less than an inch from his eye. He had cuts and abrasions on his face and hands, and his body was pinned against a large metal door, fending off attacks. His primary focus was to survive and simply get home. Page 22. Inside the Capitol, the insurrectionists continued to physically attack Capitol Police while taunting them, saying, among other things, "You're outnumbered. There's a fucking million of us out there, and we are listening to Trump, your boss. We can take you out, and we were invited here by the President of the United States." And on page 23, if you're reading along, then a forceful surge of insurrectionists pushed forward and slammed Officer Blassingame against a stone column. He struck his spine and the back of his head and was unable to move. For the first time in his life, people were yelling into his face, calling him an N-word. Repeatedly and throughout the attack in the crypt, which is an area of the Capitol, he lost count of the many times the racial slur was hurled at him. Hurled at him by Donald Trump supporters. Hurled at him by men and women who were dispatched there by Donald Trump, the then President of the United States. This goes on and on and on, and it is an indictment of every single MAGA moron that did nothing, that encouraged this. The Ted Cruzes, the Josh Hawleys, the Matt Gaetzes, the Jim Jordans, and the other rando Republicans. People died. There was real damage, physical damage, and not just damage to our democracy that we've witnessed. I'm going to follow this lawsuit. I hope that it goes well for these two gentlemen. Former devil dog, brother of mine. And I hope other police officers in Washington, D.C. who were there and who were injured will join this lawsuit or file their own. They deserve justice. Anyway, I'd love to know what you think about this. You can leave me a voicemail, 714-576-4054. Of course, email me, please. I read every email. I listen to every voicemail. Daily at dollemore.com. You guys are the best. I appreciate it. If this isn't enough for you, you can subscribe to my podcast. That is a good time. I would also ask that you consider supporting my work here on YouTube. For as little as $2 a month, you can help support independent analysis, independent commentary on the news. It's not everybody in my space that gets the lawsuits, reads from them to inform you the way that I wish I would have many years ago when I wasn't doing this. Anyway, follow me on social media. I'd love to connect with you there. I love you guys. I appreciate all of your support. I appreciate your subscribing, your engaging with my content. It is fantastic. I'll see you next time. And until I do, be genuine and take care of one another.